Hello everyone, welcome to Cloudmash, and today we will study about Virtual Private Cloud known as VPC. So VPC is nothing but a set of IP addresses. So there might be a very different definition of VPC that you have heard before. So let me prove it to you. The VPC is nothing but a fixed set of IP addresses. So we start our VPC by specifying a CIDR space. So this one here is CIDR block of our VPC. So here it provides a VPC a set of 65,000 unique IP addresses. So it means within my VPC I can use 65,000 IP addresses. So from within these IP addresses, I can specify blocks of IP address for different tasks. So I can name it like this. So these are 256 IP addresses allotted to some particular task. In AWS convention, this thing over here, it's called a subnet. So we might say a VPC is nothing but a collection of subnets. So once you have your subnets, you can allot different resources to those particular IPs. For example, Internet Gateway, NAT Gateway, EC2 instances, Lambda functions within VPC. All of these resources are allotted within an IP address which is fixed in your VPC. So now we have like designed a VPC and allotted IP addresses to it. So let's see how we can make these resources to communicate with each other. Now suppose all of these IP addresses, like all of these belong to subnet 1, all of this belong to subnet 2, and so on. We have resources allotted to these IP addresses. In AWS terms, a simple server is called an EC2. So suppose we have 3 EC2 instances within this VPC. So what can happen now? We have these EC2 instances separated in a cloud, allotted these particular addresses. So these particular instances standalonely cannot communicate with the internet because as we know, these are in our virtual private cloud. So in our VPC, though we have these instances, they cannot communicate with the internet. So although in our virtual private cloud, they can communicate with each other. Suppose instance of subnet 1 can talk to instance in subnet 3. This kind of routing is default VPC routing. So I will tell you about routing a bit more. So what can you do to make these instances to connect to outside internet? So suppose this is our outside internet. So right now these instances cannot connect to our outside internet. What we need here is an internet gateway. So by using internet gateway, we can connect our instances to internet. But even now, these instances cannot connect to internet. Why? Because we also have to set up what is known as routing. So in AWS, corresponding to each subnet or a set of subnet, we have what known as route tables. So these route tables can be associated with one or more subnets. So what can you specify in a route table? You can specify that traffic from this particular subnet will travel through internet gateway or any other gateway, or traffic through subnet 2 and subnet 3 can travel to some internet gateway or some NAT gateway. So there are two types of subnets basically. One is a public subnet and another one is private subnet. You can specify while launching your subnets whether it will be public or private. Public subnet resources have direct access to internet, although private subnet resources are not directly accessible by the internet. So what we can do in our public subnet route table, we can specify that the packet from subnet 1 will travel through internet gateway. So by this, all the traffic in our subnet 1 can access internet. So what about private instances? So to access internet by private instances, AWS provide a mechanism known as NAT gateway. So by using NAT gateway, you can connect your private subnet to internet. So NAT gateway on its own does not provide connectivity to internet. What will happen here is you specify in route table that traffic from these particular private subnets will go through NAT gateway, and after the packet will travel from the subnet 2 and subnet 3, which are the private subnet, it goes through NAT gateway and then it goes through internet gateway. So by this it will be able to access internet. So let's see all of this mechanism within AWS. Let's go ahead and create our VPC. So type VPC here and then create VPC. So it will show you two options. You can create VPC only, or AWS will help you create other components with your VPC like internet gateway, subnets, and route tables. So we will select VPC and more here. Let's give VPC01 name, and here we will add IPv4 CIDR blocks. So we don't need that much IP addresses, so we will take only 128 IP addresses in our VPC, and we will launch our VPC in one availability zone, and we will have one public subnet and one private subnet. So let's take our customized CIDRs with like our VPC has 128 IPs, so let's take CIDR range, yeah, to be 16. So this is continuous CIDR range, like after 16 IPs you will have this another set of CIDR range start from this particular IP. So we don't need an S3 gateway endpoints, and we will going to need one NAT gateway too. So let's create. If you specify less number of CIDRs in your VPC and less subnets, your VPC creation will be fast. Let's wait for it. So here our VPC creation is successful. So let's view our VPC. So yeah, on resource map we can see we have two subnets, each having their corresponding route table, and we can see public subnet is routed to internet gateway and private subnet is routed to your NAT gateway. So like wise here you can say IPv4 CIDR of our VPC subnets. Maybe you can refresh, then you can see your newly created subnets. We have public subnet with corresponding specified IPv4 CIDR, our private subnet with corresponding IPv4 CIDR, route tables. So we will see route tables associated with public subnet. So here, as discussed before, VPC will have its default routing and any other traffic will be directed to internet gateway. So all internet access in public subnet will be directed to internet gateway, and in private subnet we have routes corresponding to NAT gateway. Like all our traffic in private subnet will go through NAT gateway, and by this particular NAT gateway is in public subnet, and through this NAT gateway via internet gateway it will connect to outside internet. So let's go ahead and launch EC2 instances. Public instance zero one. We will proceed without key pair in public instance. It will create security groups for us, and here we want to launch it in our custom VPC. VPC1 public subnet. We want to assign public IP to this instance. So let's launch. So as we can see, this instance is running. Let's connect it. We will use EC2 Instance Connect, which is AWS specific online console embedded instance connection. So let's connect. So yeah, now we are connected. So let's check connection to internet. So yeah, it is able to talk to google.com. So basically all of this traffic is going through internet gateway, and it is receiving packet from the internet with the help of internet gateway. So let's stop this. Now let's go ahead and create a private instance in our private subnet. Private instance 1. So here this time we need to have key pair, because without key pair you will not be able to access your private instance. So let's launch it in our VPC. So as this private instance does not have any public IP, so we have to connect it through our public instance, which is in our public subnet. So we first connect to our public subnet instance. So here, if I first try with EC2 user @ IP of our private instance, see, it is saying permission denied because while connecting to this instance, it has tried doing public key authentication. So we will generate key here. So I have already downloaded my key pair from AWS. Let's save and connect to our instance while using this key. Okay, unprotected file. Let's do some ownership changes. Okay, private key files are not accessible by others. Okay, so how about this one? Yeah, so now it is able to connect. So earlier it was not letting us connect because private key file we have given permission to access, like it will be accessed by anyone, but this instance has forced us to perform permissions so that it will not be accessible by others. So 0400 uh, permissions, we were able to connect to a private instance. So let's check internet connectivity here. So here also it is able to connect. So here traffic is first going through NAT gateway, and after that it is going through internet gateway. So that's all regarding VPC. So if you want more videos like this, please comment down below the topic. I will try make video on those topics.